So the first stage that I do is to roughly mark out the scene in pencil. I spend maybe 3 or 4 minutes just going around quickly scribbling in roughly where things will go, the main outline of the building, the car, and other significant objects like the tree and the lamppost. Now, if you're familiar with the work of the sketcher Uni Pin, he adamantly insists that you do not use a pencil when you're sketching, that you must go straight in with a marker pen, which is unerasable, but I like to use a pencil. You can erase it later, and it just helps me to know that everything's going to fit on the page. The next stage is going in with the ink pen, and I start off with foreground items. So the car is the first thing that I picked out to draw, and I always draw cars in a wibbly wobbly, cartoony style, almost as if a child has drawn them. But that's just the way I instinctively draw cars, and it doesn't matter what the car actually looks like, they all end up looking like they've melted. That's just the way I draw cars now, I guess. And then other foreground items. It's amazing how things that would be seemingly trivial and unimportant, when you're drawing with a solid line style, not a very scribbly, scratchy style, you have to make sure you draw all the foreground objects first. So even things like weeds have to be drawn in before the building, which is the main subject you're drawing. You have to make sure all the foreground items get drawn in first. So once I've drawn in the car, the lamppost and the tree, I can then go around the main outline of the house. And we'll start with a very loose, rough line on the outside and then pack in with lots and lots of detail, as you can see from the picture on the right hand side. This is the first time I've actually put the finished picture in one of my videos throughout. I just want to try it out to see if it might be helpful to compare where I am at any stage of the sketch compared to what it looks like at the end. And obviously the reference photo on the left. So the moment I'm trying out drawing a staircase, I always have a bit of trouble with staircases. My brain has a bit of a mental freeze whenever it comes to drawing stairs. So I did the banisters going down the stairs, and then I wasn't quite confident enough to do the staircase itself straight away, so I left that blank, and I'll come back to that shortly when I'm forced to do it. Now going in drawing all the windows and the window edges. I like to give the windows a bit of depth by having a window edge in the corner of each side, and for perspective reasons I've chosen the top left corner of each window pane and the outside parts of the windows just to give that depth and correct perspective. So now we can start packing as much detail as we possibly can into the sketch. And so this would be one of the fun parts when I can start drawing in roof tiles. And then once I've drawn all the tiles, I will colour them in lots of dotty different shades of grey, as you can see from the finished picture. Again, when I'm talking about drawing things in front of each other, I had to draw the plant pots on the staircase before I drew the staircase itself. And then, as you can see from my inability to draw staircases, the staircase on the very left is all over the place. But that's fine, it's just part of the wonky, sketchy style that I have. I actually think it adds something rather than taking something away. It doesn't look out of place because the sketch is so wonky and wobbly. It looks right at home. Now on to the brickwork. So I start with a series of horizontal lines, and then I'll do some very simple, quick vertical lines, and then it brings it all together as brickwork, which I will then colour in various shades of grey again. I know that's not exactly what's on the building itself, but that's my sketching style. It adds more tone of variety. You could, if you wanted to, just colour in the whole thing solid in any colour you like, or in grey. I just happen to use the multi-tone style that just becomes a bit of a signature, so hopefully if you could look at one of my sketches you would recognise it was one of mine. So that's all the ink marks done, so I just very quickly rub out the pencil lines with a putty eraser, and then we're ready for the next part, which is the fun stage, colouring in. Now I really enjoy this stage. This is when I get to do all the colouring in part without having to worry too much about getting things right or wrong. This is really just a case of disengage brain and colour in like you're a child again. So I start off with a Cold Grey 1 marker. This is an India ink marker from Faber-Castell, and they come in a set of grey soft brush marker pens. There are 4 cold grey and 4 warm grey pens in the set. If you're interested in these pens, there is a link in the description, so you can find the exact set that I use. And I go around every single part of the picture that I think needs some form of grey shading. And then what I'll do is I will go in again with a darker shade over the top, and then another darker shade, and you build up all the layers of contrast and visual interest until you have the image on the right hand side. And I think the great thing about these pens is that you can layer them. So one layer of cold grey, you can then put a darker grey over the top, or you could even put another layer of the same cold grey on top of the first layer, and that will darken it as well. But if you want a bigger contrast, you can use the different pens. So now I go over dotting about all the tiles. I leave some white and I have some grey. And then I decide to colour the windows in yellow. So this is turning all the lights on with a cadmium yellow pen. This is from a different set. This is a coloured set. The tips are slightly firmer in these ones, but they're great for small areas and they're very vibrant in colour. I then decided to make the foreground lamppost stand out a bit more, bring it forward by using a cold grey 6, which is the darkest grey. Then once that's done, I move on to one of the other main pens that I use, which is a cold grey 3. So this is the second lightest of the 4, and I use this one a lot. It adds a lot of visual interest and contrast, and I'm just going around punching in blobs of colour here and there without following any particular pattern. And as I said earlier, this is not really remotely what the scene looks like now. This is my own visual interpretation, and that's what I love about sketching, is that everyone could take the same scene and they'd all come up with a different interpretation, a different look, because we've all got our own unique way of doing things. And that's one of the great things about sketching, is there's no right or wrong, there's no rules to follow. You can just draw away and do whatever you like. And I do this because it's fun. I love sitting sketching, whether it's on location or even at home. And I know the strict rules of urban sketching is that you should be doing on location, so they say, but I don't know, I get as much enjoyment from sitting sketching at home. And plus it's warmer and you can have a lovely cup of tea alongside you, which is always nice. So getting down to the final touches now. I'm almost at the same stage as the final picture on the right hand side. So there we go, that's the final sketch. One last comparison shot. And yeah, I hope you found this interesting and useful. And once again, if you would like to have a go at sketching this yourself in your own unique sketching style, then do feel free to download the reference photo and have a go.